Okay. So, as a lot of people probably don't know, on my YouTube channel, I used to do a lot more politics. I used to be more involved. Um, I guess I was like a little bit more of like a moderate progressive, whatever. But we talked about politics a lot. After Donald Trump lost, I kind of lost interest in the topic, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I guess Donald Trump was just a very interesting figure, and we like talking about him. I still do advocate for some stuff, but like for the most part, I'll do like social takes, but I won't do in-depth political takes because I don't enjoy them. And there are things that I feel like you have to talk very accurately on, or else you're going to get stirred in the wrong direction. But I've been getting a lot of people asking me about what's going on in Afghanistan. So I did a bunch of research while I was on vacation, and I decided, like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, let's try to do this in the way that's just as like accurate as possible. So these are the two. I found 2 articles and a video on like the situation. I'm going to try to go in depth in a concise way that's not super long. And let's read this because I feel like I've been seeing so many people just like not accurately presenting the situation, and I want to give you guys a full insight of like what really went wrong, not just like what conservatives or progressives want you to think. Like conservatives just blaming everything on Biden, not that he's innocent, and then you have a progressive news station saying like, "Hey, listen, I know that terrorists took over, but it's not. It's the fires aren't that bad, like that kind of stuff. Like it's not that bad. It's pretty peaceful for a burning city, Anyway, let's read through this thing here. So it's titled, Biden, I do not regret my decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. President Biden on Monday defended his decision to withdraw the U.S. military from Afghanistan despite the swift Taliban takeover of the country and chaotic scenes unfolding in its capital of Kabul. I don't know if I'm saying that right. As people crowd the airport in an effort to flee. Wow. I think I might regret my decision in some capacity if that was going on. I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me, he said. I am deeply saddened by the facts we face, but I do not regret my decision. Speaking about the Taliban's sudden ousting of the U.S.-backed government, Biden acknowledged that the truth is this didn't unfold more quickly than we anticipated. Now, the first thing that bothers me about that is that they were anticipating a Taliban takeover. They were anticipating it to take longer. And the reason that kind of like irks me, and because that's what's suggested there. The reason that kind of irks me is because it shows that like this was a political removal. We left Afghanistan purely out of politics because everybody wants our troops to come home, and I totally get it. I do. I understand that. Of course, who wants our troops to not be home? But if it was going to destabilize the country and you knew it, clearly you fucked it up. The thing is I think that they estimated it would take upwards of 90 days or maybe longer for it to happen. So they probably would have like withdrawn so that it looked like we looked nice, like, yay, Biden's finally out. But then end up trickling back in a way where it's like, we're just policing them. We're just helping them police. But he added he would not pass the war onto a 5th president or say that a little more time in Afghanistan will make all the difference. And that's kind of unfortunate because I feel like that kind of needed to be what is said. And this is one of those problems where a lot of people have a very shallow perspective on things because it's not our jobs to investigate. I mean, probably my job, but it's not really your jobs to investigate the depth. So you're like, yeah, I don't want troops in Afghanistan. Well, it's the president's job to say, hey, listen, I'm much more ingrained in this issue. I need to explain to you why we are there. This is this, and this. And then, actually give the American people the benefit of the doubt and actually respect them enough to tell them the truth instead of just being like, yeah, I'll get them out. Yeah, it's what you said. Let's just do it, even though I know we're going to have to go back in like a fucking 3 months from now anyway. Last month, Biden said it was highly unlikely that the Taliban would overrun the country when the U.S. forces departed. Well, it was very likely because it happened. Though Biden said he accepted responsibility for how the withdrawal is unfolding, in White House remarks, he largely blamed the Afghan military for not standing and fighting against the Taliban as well as Afghan political leaders for fleeing. We're going to cover this in our next article because there's a lot of reasons that the Afghan government or the military and whatnot and the political leaders fled and stopped caring. And I'm going to explain that later because there was a rampant misuse of funds and et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to save that for a couple of minutes from now. A senior administration official told NPR on Monday that most U.S. embassy staffers have been evacuated from Kabul, I don't know, with a small footprint on the ground at the city's airport. The official said the administration expects it will take a few more days to continue to move those people out. The White House views the situation as volatile and serious, the official said, but not a worst-case scenario since there has not, so far, been widespread violence around Kabul. Okay, that's a bit of an interesting take, but I guess that they're right. It's been a swift takeover, and it's actually true because a lot of the soldiers, a lot of the Afghan soldiers, just kind of gave up, and I'll explain to you why in a bit. The official also defended the administration's preparations for the evacuation. This is a scenario that sadly we were ready for. Of course you were, but that's of course they're ready for those scenarios. I mean, you're always supposed to be ready for a worst case scenario. Though U.S. plans have been changed several times in recent days as the evacuations have been launched, including sending in thousands of U.S. troops to help the process. Okay, so we went to leave and now we went back in already. Wow, great. Kabul is pronounced like Kobul. Okay, like from Cobblestone or Kabul. Okay, Kabul. Thank you. Remarks amid fierce criticism. Criticism of how the U.S. Exited was ostracized. Oh my God, has been bipartisan. Jesus, I can't read it all today. Some hawkish Republicans have blasted Biden for failing to prevent the Taliban takeover and warned of the potential risk of the renewed growth of terror cells. Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. Others, such as former President Donald Trump, who inked a 2020 deal with the Taliban and set in a timeline to place for the U.S. exit, focused on the withdrawal itself. It's not that we left Afghanistan, it's the grossly incompetent way we left, Trump said in a statement at the end of Biden's remarks. Now, let's actually watch. This is a content creator called Cam Bigby here. Cam Bigby. He's a political TikToker. I've talked to him before. He's a nice guy. We don't agree on everything, but he seems to be as accurate as honestly anybody else I could have watched. So I'm going to throw this up. I'm going to let you guys. This is basically like the way that Trump just tried to leave. So we're going to watch this for context. I think it's pretty decent.
So somehow everybody's blaming Trump for this chaos in Afghanistan, but Trump had a legitimate peace deal in place, and it would have been honored were he reelected. See, Trump was going to pull 5,000 troops out of Afghanistan in exchange.
Oh, it probably would have been honored either way. I think that Biden pulled out of it because he criticized the amount of power it would have given the Taliban.
For a power-sharing deal with the Taliban. They'd have some power in the Afghan government, and we'd be able to keep some counterterrorism forces there in Afghanistan.
I don't really like the idea of the Afghan government having power there, just so you know.
To monitor them. In addition to that, we'd be allowed to have some CIA operatives there to gather.
Or did they say
there? CIA to have some of that. We'd be allowed to have some forces there in some counterterrorism forces there. Taliban. They'd have some power. They'd have for a power sharing deal with the Taliban.
Yeah, it was the Taliban. I was just I don't want Taliban. I don't want the Taliban to have fucking power and yeah. So I can understand why Biden pulled out of this already.
After that, we'd be allowed to have some CIA operatives there to gather intelligence. There'd also be an exchange of prisoners. They'd give us 1,000 members of the Afghan security force, and we'd give them 5,000 of the prisoners we have. The Taliban had to uphold a permanent ceasefire. They'd have to honor rights for women and minorities, and disband their militia groups. But instead...
I wonder what that means, because we just watched a video where the Taliban said we're going to honor the rights of women and minorities with that as according to Islam. And they were already doing that, their interpretation of Islam and upholding the honoring minorities and women based on their interpretation of a holy book where they were really just suppressing women.
Biden foolishly said, nope, everybody out. He had no plan and it was sloppy. Biden left behind 17,074 pieces of military equipment ripe for the taking, and the Taliban did take them. We're talking MRAPs mounted with 50 caliber machine guns, Scan Eagle drones, helicopters, hundreds of Humvees, weapons, and ammunition.
If that's true, which I believe, this is a very credible guy, then yeah, he definitely botched it. How the fuck do you leave behind military equipment as well? You definitely rushed out. If you had a plan, you would usually plan to keep all the military equipment, no?
Biden gifted the Taliban a brand new state-of-the-art military arsenal that they then used to take over the country. As far as I'm concerned, he's an accessory. Trump planned to clean up the mess and get all that equipment out of there. With the U.S. military out and the peace deals forgotten about, the Taliban could do whatever they wanted. On the 11th, they began beheading surrendering Afghan troops. Instead of a shared government, it was a complete military takeover. Now the Taliban are outside the U.S. embassy shouting death to America. The only leverage we had over them is that the Taliban wanted to be recognized by the international community as a new country. But that doesn't matter anymore. That leverage is gone. The ship has sailed. Because now our good old pals, Russia and China, have swept in and are talking.
China, Russia, core Taliban as Western. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I say it all the time, and you guys, some of you don't like to hear it. But, this is what happens. People criticize the United States for policing the world. If it's not us, it's someone else, China or Russia. And of the three countries, we have the best values. We are the freest countries. The Western civilization are the freest countries, that they are least oppressive to people. And it's just a fact. They don't particularly care for women or minorities in China or Russia or, anybody really, or workers, especially in China. Just saying.
With Taliban delegates, China is already ready to recognize them. So somehow everybody's blaming Trump for this chaos.
Yeah, so I think that was a good thing to take. Now, I do understand from Biden's perspective not wanting to give the give the Taliban any recognition, but it was still sloppy. And again, we're going to go on to show you like why this really happened. So this is President Biden's what is it, Saigon moment? I don't know what that word means. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, Republican from L.A. something, I don't know, Louisiana, probably. What, you know what? I'm just shut up, Papa God. And Sunday on CBS, Face the Nation, referring to the chaotic departure from the Vietnam in 1975. And unfortunately, it was very predictable. It seemed like many in the President Biden's intelligence community got this devastatingly wrong. LA is Louisiana. Did I get it right? Shit. Okay, well, keep Papa, you're so smart. Some Democrats have made similar criticisms and largely have focused on the potential humanitarian crisis, particularly for women and girls left behind after the withdrawal. Other Democrats have been supportive of the decision, but are privately handwriting over the potential political problem the chaotic exit creates for the party in power. Yeah, so like, yeah, this kind of shows to me that it's like, yeah, it was the socially, like, we want our troops home. Hey, everybody get out of here. We got to bring everybody home, blah, blah, blah. But it just doesn't seem to be the right decision. There was never a good time to withdraw. The fast collapse of the Afghan government and the lack of a fight from the Afghan military, Biden said, reinforced his decision to leave, and that a military solution to a secure and stable Afghanistan didn't exist. So Biden seemed to have left knowing that it was going to be a complete shit show. I guess he thought it would just happen slower. There was never a good time to withdraw the U.S. forces by then. That's why we are still there. The president pointed out that going into Afghanistan was about getting those who attacked us on 9/11 to make sure Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups can't use Afghanistan as a place from which to attack the U.S. again. He noted that Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden was killed a decade ago and that the mission was never supposed to be nation-building or creating a unified, centralized democracy. Well, that I kind of disagree with. I mean, I feel like we should be helping them, because there seems to be there's a direct correlation with us being there for a long time and women having rights. And we went there for oil, by the way. You know what I mean? Fuck that shit. So, like, oh, that's never why we're supposed to go there. You know, I believe in spreading democracy around the world. And I think that, like, women and children having more rights was a good thing. Like, how do you... That's what he's saying. He's like, yeah, we were never supposed to help women. That's what he's saying. Like, backhandedly, but that's what he's saying. The goal, he said, was preventing a terrorist attack on American homeland, and the mission needs to be narrowly focused on counterterrorism. I disagree. I think it's about building more like democratic, Republican, whatever, free countries and helping marginalized groups get rights. That's what I think it's about. That is something Biden has been saying for more than a decade, since he was former President Barack Obama's vice president. That's how you know he doesn't really care about women. I mean, that's honestly, like, you really can't be the person who supports like leftist ideology or like women's rights, and then like, yeah, we're gonna leave that country. We didn't really care about the right stuff. We just cared about them not attacking us. It's like, come on. Okay, Afghanistan doesn't have much oil. It's mostly earth material resources like gold, silver, and copper. Okay, thank you very much. Copper's actually very expensive, I think. It's crazy. The president, who has been following the crisis overseas from Camp David, returned to the White House on Monday afternoon to make a speech as thousands of U.S. forces have been sent back to secure Kabul. Got that one. Airport to finish evacuating Americans and others who helped the U.S. during the war. Biden took no questions from reporters after his remarks and then returned to Camp David. He acknowledged that the scenes on the ground are gut-wrenching for the U.S. veterans and aid workers who spent years serving and working in Afghanistan. Yeah, it's kind of a slap in the face to a bunch of men and women who sacrificed themselves to try to provide freedom to this country. For those who have lost loved ones in Afghanistan, and for the Americans who have fought and served in the country, this is deeply, deeply personal. Yeah, I can imagine how upset people would be if their husband or wife died, or their son or their daughter died for freedom of that country, and then it was all spit on almost instantaneously. So this is going to be the article, why did the Afghan army disintegrate so quickly? So I read through this, and there are basically like 5 major points here. Or maybe there's less or more. I don't know. But let's kind of go through these. Okay. I could have swore that there was like a... I hope this is the correct article. I don't know. On August 15th, the Taliban captured the Afghan capital, Kabul, and declared the war in Afghanistan over. The lightning speed with which the group made major territorial gains as the Afghan National Defense Security Forces retreated without putting up a fight that shocked many. Over the past 20 years, the U.S. has spent more than $83 billion, oh, Jesus Christ, training, equipping, and developing in the Afghan National Army, police, air force, and special forces. Yet under the advance of an armed group carrying light weapons, the ANDSF fell apart in a spectacular fashion. The unprecedented pace of the Taliban's territorial gains surprised even U.S. intelligence, which had portrayed it would take several months for the group to establish control over the country. This is important to me because, yeah, it establishes that they thought that they would still get the country back. I feel like that's so fucked up. They're like, yeah, we knew they were going to take the country back over, but we figured it would be faster. Or slower, rather. Which to me suggests this is a purely political withdrawal, where we just didn't give a fuck about the people in that country. As a result, the U.S. and several other Western countries have had to redeploy thousands of troops to help with the emergency evacuation of their citizens and diplomatic staff from Kabul. Had Western analysis and intelligence agencies been more aware of the realities on the ground, perhaps they would have not been taken by surprise by the developments of the past few days. A number of factors account for the collapse of the Afghan state and the ANDSF. First, there was widespread corruption in Afghanistan's defense and interior mistreaties. Oh, ministries. Oh my God, I'm dumb. Where funds, ammunition, and food deliveries were stolen before reaching the soldiers on the ground. The ammunition and other equipment were sold on the black market, eventually ending up in the Taliban's hands. So yeah, this is there, and I feel like there's no way they didn't know this. Like, there's no way you don't know these things are happening. I just don't think that the U.S. fucking intelligence organizations really gave a shit. But they were stealing, like, weapons and throwing them on the black market, stealing food, giving it to other, like, Taliban soldiers. Like, how could you not have predicted that? How do you not know? This is rampant corruption. Furthermore, some commanders embezzled money by submitting fund requests for the salaries of ghost soldiers who had not actually signed up for the military. As this was happening, the personnel were kept unpaid and retained on duty without permission to leave and see their families for months. Wow. Could you imagine not getting fucking paid? Of course you're going to leave. Unsurprisingly, the ANDSF had one of the highest desertion and casualty rates in the world. According to one estimate, the ANDSF per month attrition rate was 5,000, while the recruitment rate was 300 to 500. Holy shit. Yeah, so nobody wanted to join because they weren't getting fucking paid or seeing any of the supplies that they were supposed to be promised. Second, the embezzlement and corruption undermined morale within the ranks of the army. The integrity of senior leadership is pivotal in military affairs to win the troops. Respect and loyalty. For unpaid soldiers, the lavish lifestyles of their commanders were often too much to swallow. Hence, instead of fighting and dying, they preferred to save their lives by surrendering to the Taliban under the amnesty orders. Of course, who wouldn't? If you have no reason to give a shit, why would you give a shit? Third, there was also no ideological cohesion within the army or a sense of national duty and belonging. Well, of course not, because people aren't getting paid. But in fact, there was a significant mistrust towards the country's political leadership. No Afghan soldier was ready to fight and die to defend President, what is this, Ashraf Ghani, or I should have said the president, or the government. Conspiracy theories about a secret deal between the Afghan government and the Taliban were rife among the Afghan troops. Maybe that's true. I don't know. This environment of doubt and suspicion further undermined Afghan soldiers' resolve to resist the advance of the ideological, cohesive Taliban, whose fighters were driven by the desire to establish an Islamic, emirate, and drive out foreign troops that they saw as occupiers. I really wouldn't doubt that, like, the Afghan government was, or, the government of Afghanistan, the political leaders, I wouldn't doubt that they were just like, yeah, let's take as much money from the United States as possible and then, like, give it back to Taliban because we don't care. Because there probably are people in that country that just don't give a shit about, like, more progressive values of, actually treating people equally. Fourth, continuous political interference and reshuffling of office holders as high as interior and defense ministries, governors, and police chief also affected the ANDSF. Battlefield performance. An army needs unity of command and leadership continually to function properly and fight effectively on the battlefield. The military chief of staff is the center of gravity of this organization, and if he is changed consistently, it adversely affects the organization. Yeah, okay. The Afghan president regularly changed his military leaders amid the U.S. withdrawal and the Taliban's of across Afghanistan. Why would he do that? So there's no consistency in like who your commander is, so it's hard to develop loyalty. For instance, the president replaced the Afghan Army Chief Lieutenant General Wal Mohammed, whatever, who was appointed in June, with some other guy, Special Forces Operating Command, and then some other people were replaced in a couple of months. I can't pronounce the names. I mean, I think the hell am I going to do about it? Fifth, the Taliban's smart military strategy of taking control of major borders, crossings, main highways, and besieging the big cities crippled Kabul's ability to send reinforcements and supplies. Many army units were cut off from the rest of the country, and thus were forced to either flee across the borders, neighboring countries, or to dissolve. Finally, despite receiving years of training and billions, $83 billion worth of equipment, or I guess altogether it was the training and equipment, the ANDSF never deployed the capacity to stand on its own, developed the capacity to stand on its own. In fact, it was entirely dependent on the U.S. and NATO troops to protect urban areas. Once these forces began to withdraw, there was no barrier to stop the advance of the Taliban, and the weakness and incompetence that was covered up by foreign military presence quickly came to foe. Okay, so I guess I understand. I mean, honestly, after looking at this, I kind of maybe I possibly get why Biden said, fuck this. The money was being rampantly misused, and like it was never going to be like we would have just been there eternally, and it would have basically been like our country that we had no real control over, with like corrupt political leaders just stealing our money. Maybe if Biden came out and said, "Hey, listen, we pulled out because the government was being pieces of shit," I would have been like, okay. As the collapse of the ANDSF became apparent, the Afghan government scrambled to put together a new force composed of various militants. Three influential warlords. I'm not going to read their names. The names are this. Look at how long. This is how long their names are, bro. Look at this. 2 fucking sentences. 2 lines of text. To forge a joint front assault on the Taliban and coordinate their struggle with the ANDSF. However, the fall of one of the warlords, the Taliban, forced them to flee the country. The collapse of the ANDSF, even before the U.S.'s withdrawal, was completed, and the way the gains of the so-called war on terror have been reversed will reverberate for years to come. The thousands of fighters freed by the Taliban from Bagram Air Base, including those from Al-Qaeda and other groups, will pose a military security challenge in the region and beyond. So yeah, there's your information. Honestly, just for like a little bit of a recap, it really seemed like Biden just kind of rushed out. He probably said, fuck it, this country doesn't give a shit about us anyway. The politicians are being corrupt pieces of shit, and they're taking advantage of our aid, and so he popped out, and then the government scrambled to maintain their control, but they basically got shit on. Honestly, I don't know if it was the right decision, because I do think that we should try to spread our influence, but I will say I understand it. So now we can get away from the stinky politics. Ew.
Dr. Damage just subscribed.
Thank you for the subscription. Ew, stinky politics. Right? Am I right, guys?